were smoking pot, you would have really enjoyed that, because one of the thrills is audio. I can tell you from having burnt a Led Zeppelin record down to nothing but a shredded plastic nubbin that that is the case. But that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. I want to talk about freedom. I want to talk about people's capability to medically treat their lives, enhance the way they live. I also want to talk about laws that seem to be somewhat superficial at this point, that are politically motivated, and really kind of get down to the basic life that you and I live. Now, we are originating from West Hollywood, California, which means at the bottom of my street, and as you know, we originate out of Marilyn Monroe's former apartment, are two different state-certified marijuana stores, where many, many, many people find relief for one thing or another. And the word marijuana here is like air, water, restaurant, but maybe in the middle of North Carolina, it may have a separate vibe. So we're going to kind of get into that. And I want to welcome to the show right now a man by the name of Morgan Fox, and he's the communications manager for the Marijuana Policy Project in Washington, D.C. And Morgan, welcome, 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 and thank you for bringing out into the forefront this thing that actually saves lives, something not everyone understands.
Thanks for having the show, Harrison.
So let's get right down to it. All right, you're in Washington, D.C. right now, is that right?
That's correct.
And in Washington, D.C., I imagine the sense is similar when you say marijuana as it might be in the middle of Kansas versus here in Los Angeles.
You'd actually be surprised. Marijuana is pretty widely accepted here among a broad range of socioeconomic groups. There was actually a really interesting article in the Washingtonian recently talking about everyone from, young kids. Not young kids, but like young adults in the city, like young professionals, to well-established professionals and diplomats using marijuana. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's a further illustration of the gulf between politicians and where the people are at. Because just like in D.C., as well as everywhere else, politicians are very, very far from where the people are on this issue. And I mean, really, with medical marijuana coming to D.C., hopefully by this summer, that attitude is going to start to change and rub off on the national politicians as well.
Well, and that's the thing, is the politicians, as we learn more and more with the horrific thing that we encounter, this nonstop 24-hour cycle of them running for president, which is just the same rerun of nonsense. But we learned something critical, that if the wind blows suddenly in that direction, nautically at 3 degrees, we're a southerner today. And we're, you know what I'm saying? That we're actually for the first time witnessing the ebb and flow of politics, the total chicanery and shenanigans. Likewise, if suddenly a bunch of people said, well, we all feel marijuana's important, that it's been around since the Native Americans, it's been around for thousands of years actually, it has medical benefits, it works great for not only ocular problems, for depression, for appetite, for treating issues consistent with HIV infection, the whole soup, cat, and pizzas, it's wonderful and amazing. Suddenly Newt Gingrich is going to stand there and go, well, I've always felt marijuana was part of the American fabric.
Well, that's one of the strange things about this issue, is that it seems to be the only one where we're not seeing that sort of immediate ebb and flow of politicians following public favor. I mean, the most recent Gallup poll that came out showed that 50% of Americans think that marijuana should be legalized and treated similar to alcohol. Over 77% think that medical marijuana should be legal. Name a single issue that enjoys 71% support. I dare you. And this is the one issue that politicians have consistently fallen farther and farther behind the will of the people on. And I think a lot of it is because they're still afraid of being considered soft on crime. And that basically puts the power in the hands of us, the voters. We need to tell our elected representatives how we feel about this issue so that they know they're not going to be risking their seat if they come out in favor of this.
Harrison with you. You are watching our Go Harrison special. This is our hangout where we run across the Google platform. You're also watching our live stream at GoHarrison.com. We're talking to Morgan Fox. He's the communications manager for the Marijuana Policy Project in Washington, D.C. Among many of the board members are people like Bill Maher, Jesse Ventura, whom we had on just a month ago, Jack Black, Susan Sarandon, Adam Carolla, Tommy Chong, Hal Sparks, whom we've had on many times, Melissa Etheridge, whom we've had on as well, Annie DeFranco, and presidential candidate Gary Johnson. These are just a handful of headliners. Then there are hundreds of thousands of people beneath who actually are just regular folks for whom marijuana is a daily part of their life. I will admit to something. I'm not sure what here publicly, but I would say I'm not worse off for having known people or having perhaps possibly personally known a joint or two myself. That this ooga booga and this make-believe and this fantasy that somehow this very substance is the downfall of all American culture is what's still being sold by a lot of these politicians. Knowing how politicians work, knowing that you're near K Street, knowing that they tend to be motivated by the re-election cycle and something that's going to help get them from point A to point B and bring in the dollars, what sort of thing do you think that we might practice to help push them in the right direction?
Well, really, the best way to do it is just to write letters, send emails, get them on the phone, make sure that their staffers and eventually they know where the support lies on this issue. But you mentioned something that I think is kind of important, that you don't feel like you've been worse off for knowing people that use marijuana. 100 million people in this country have used marijuana at least once in their life. And I bet you not a single one of them thinks that they deserve to go to jail for that. And very few of the people in this country could honestly say that they wish they had never known someone that used marijuana, because almost a third of the country has.
You know, it's funny, Morgan Fox, when we say use marijuana, even the word use makes it sound like heroin. You know, you don't use cigarettes. You don't use beer. You might, but that's not the lexicon that we use. So when we use marijuana, it definitely is something kind of extra special. I recall growing up in Chicago in the northern suburbs, and the railroad line there is the Chicago Northwestern, and Ravinia is a famous park where live bands played. And along the railroad tracks for a 30-mile stretch up and down the Chicago suburbs are huge marijuana plants in the summer, because the seeds from people smoking joints on the train would fall over the side of the tracks. And the summertime in Chicago with the nice black earth is very hospitable to this stuff growing wild. And nobody had a problem with it. Maybe it's the Chicago mentality, but people smoked, and they smoked it for a variety of different reasons. And I wonder if the current ooga booga with the stuff, I mean, certainly in the 60s, was there this kind of backlash going on then?
I think the backlash really began then. It officially started in 1972 with Richard Nixon's declaration of the war on drugs. But the backlash was beginning in large part because of the social issues that were involved with lots of people that use marijuana recreationally. It became associated with that, and therefore set up the beginnings of a culture war that has persisted to this day.
So your opinion here, or let's just say your practical application of what you do here representing this council, is there are 100 million people we know, as you pointed out, who probably admittedly smoke marijuana for whatever purpose, much of which is medical. That's the instrument which here in California does give this and make it advantageous for people to have to their access. It treats all kinds of stuff from depression to nausea. It's got a long history in its chemical context for treating people for that which ails them. We know from your website, which is mpp.org, marypaulpaul.org, someone is arrested for marijuana offense every 37 seconds. 89% of these are for marijuana possession, not for sale or manufacture. In the U.S., there are more arrests for marijuana possession each year than for all violent crimes combined. All I could say is, holy shucks.
Well, we live in a society that arrests and prosecutes over 750,000 people a year just for using a substance that's safer than alcohol and not committing any violent crimes. And we should all be deeply ashamed of that. And I think the more shame we feel about that, the faster these laws are going to change.
We're talking to Morgan Fox. He's the communications manager for the Marijuana Policy Project in Washington, D.C. Their website, again, mpp.org. And one of the things that you'll find people probably in the 60-plus age range category is the constant repetition of the statement that marijuana is the gateway drug. Has there been actually any statistical proof that that's true?
Actually, all of the recent studies that have looked at the gateway theory have proven it to be false. If anything, there's a correlation, and that only exists because of prohibition. When you go to a marijuana dealer on the streets, they have an incentive there to sell you harder drugs, and they have access to them in most cases because the people that are supplying them with marijuana are the same people that are also bringing in large amounts of harder drugs. If you remove marijuana from the illicit drug market, then you remove that incentive to sell harder drugs to marijuana consumers. I mean, when was the last time you walked into a liquor store and someone tried to sell you crack? It just doesn't happen. And that's because we've separated those drug markets.
Yeah, I was going to be snide and say something, but for real, you're right. Nobody's ever tried to do that. The other thing is, you know, and even libertarians like Ron Paul and others on the very far left, the very far right, and somewhere floating around the middle, I think we all get, Gore Vidal famously pushed this forward too, even William F. Buckley at times, that if you decriminalize an activity, it suddenly loses its sex appeal in a lot of ways. And if you take the profit out of it, people aren't likely to harm each other in order to do the thing that they're going to do anyway.
Well, that's absolutely true. Actually, I learned when I was traveling in Amsterdam, I was hanging out at a bar with a gentleman who was in charge of the police academy there for downtown Amsterdam. And while we were, sitting around talking and, drinking coffee, he told me that the basic way that people view marijuana use under the age of 21 is that it's sort of like a stupid and frivolous thing to do. And that's the same way that people view it above the age of 25. And in that window, there are people that think it's fun to do. You don't see that in the United States because it's been so glamorized and because it's become such a huge part of popular culture. And that's one of the things that really bothers me about prohibitionist arguments lately is that I constantly hear people saying, why would we want to add another drug into the system of drugs that we have to deal with? You know, we already have big enough problems with alcohol and tobacco. Why would we want to add another drug? Well, I've got news for those people. People are already still using marijuana. You know, we're not adding another drug. We're just changing the way we need to deal with it.
We're talking to Morgan Fox. He's the communications manager for the Marijuana Policy Project in Washington, D.C. He's in Washington right now. I am in West Hollywood, California. And let's talk for a second, Morgan, about the legal use of it here in California. It wasn't by mistake. It's popularly still supported. Handful of people would like to see it go away, but it's a big moneymaker for the state. A lot of people are getting major relief. And for somebody watching right now or listening who doesn't get that there are medical applications for this that are really real, really viable, and really valuable, talk about those a little bit so that people get the scope of this thing.
Well, there are numerous studies out there showing the potential medical benefits of using cannabis as a medicine. Unfortunately, the federal government has been standing in the way of a lot of potential research, most recently on the applications of using marijuana to treat PTSD in returning veterans. And until we can get rid of federal interference with this, we're not going to see the true scope of what this plant can do for people medically. But I would challenge people that say that medical marijuana has no actual medical applications to just listen to some of the people that I talk to on a daily basis. People that have told me that they were in incredible pain and basically wanted to die, and that using marijuana was able to allow them to live a normal life and have a little bit more time with their children and not be completely zonked out on intense opiate pharmaceuticals. Just the people that have told me what a benefit this has had for their entire life is mind-blowing. And I think that if a lot of the opponents and the people that say that this has no medical application could really go face-to-face with these people, if they have even a shred of compassion, they'll start to rethink their position on this issue.
So, Morgan Fox, let's examine the federal government's lack of desire to be helpful in this situation, that Hell, we had the Obama administration teetering on the high dive of whether to pull the plug on this or kind of look the other way. What's the payoff for the federal government not to just let this thing happen the way they do in Amsterdam and Germany and Switzerland and France and, first world countries? And we imagine ourselves to be the same, though our the way we do stuff may resemble not such first world countries. What's the upside for the government? Why such resistance?
Well, marijuana prohibition is a huge jobs program for federal law enforcement. Without marijuana prohibition, I think you'd probably see a couple thousand DEA agents probably lose their jobs. You'd also see major drops in incarceration, which would mean that prison guards would start. The need for prison guards would start to drop. And also the money that the federal government as well as state and local governments get from asset forfeiture and seizures in drug cases is just mind-blowing. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And if marijuana prohibition were removed, that cash flow would be removed. In addition, I think that it's in large part an effort by the federal government to maintain strict control over this particular commodity, just as a way of asserting control over state commerce.
Yeah, you totally nailed it there. I don't disagree, not even 1%. We go back to the 1930s, possibly before then, when we had the great yellow journalist of Hearst, and the whole notion that they were going to use, hemp and marijuana sister plant to start using for newspaper because, well, hell, it's renewable 5 times over, etc. But the Dow Chemicals and other big corporate interests not only make the pulp, but they create the chemicals that break it down. Then there's the ink for the paper and the trees and the lumber interests. And, marijuana or hemp or whatever we want to call it has been put by the wayside, but it was the solution for George Bush I in World War II, leaping out of an airplane in a parachute made out of hemp. Hemp for victory, World War II. Grow it in your backyard. Please grow marijuana in your backyard. What a switch around from then.
Well, it's actually not all that different. It's just slightly different groups that are involved now. If you look at the people that donated money against Proposition 19 in California in 2010, it was largely law enforcement and the alcohol industry. 2 groups that stand to lose a lot of money from marijuana prohibition ending in the state.
I love it. I love it. And the alcohol industry, really? It's like, a cartoon. It's like suddenly there's the alcohol. It says a lot.
Well, there was actually a really amazing study that just came out that showed that in medical marijuana states, not only do traffic fatalities drop 9%, but beer sales drop 5%. I mean, what does that tell you?
I'm sure there's somebody watching right now that could attest to that. So we'll just assume that that's more than amply true. So what can people do to get into action? Our audience are definitely activist type of people. They will suit up and show up for a cause that they believe in. This state, with its 38 million residents that goes all the way up to Oregon and down to Mexico, there are many, many, many people and people interested all over the place. What can people do to become involved in a way that's useful to you guys?
Well, you can start by going to mpp.org and signing up for our email alerts. We have them separated by national alerts as well as individual states, no matter where you are in the country. But you can also contact your local representatives. Make sure they know exactly how you feel about this issue and just keep at it. Call them up, talk to them in a respectful, polite manner. Don't scream at them, but make sure that they know that this is a legitimate issue and that the people that support this issue are legitimate.
And how do we determine that part? Because that's kind of the rub, is who's legitimate, who's legitimate and who's not. How do we know this stuff?
Well, you can start off just by being polite when you're talking to your lawmakers. Talk to them like you would, anybody else that, deserved respect, even though most lawmakers, it's questionable whether they deserve respect these days. But really, as long as You know, you talk to them like professionals. They will treat you in a professional manner. And when they know that serious, politically active members of their constituency support this issue, they're going to start thinking about it a lot more. And as long as we keep the conversation going, we wind up with things such as the Google Plus hangout that happened earlier today with Richard Branson and Elliot Spitzer and Mr. Antonio Costa from the UN, uh, specifically talking about the war on drugs. When we start to make this conversation be forefront in the national conversation of political issues, then we're going to start having uh, real progress show itself.
I think it's important that you point this out. Morgan Fox, you are the communications manager for the Marijuana Policy Project in Washington, D.C. in California. But I think it's important to note about law enforcement being really against this, and that much of it, like much in the world, is about job protection, not about common sense, not about even doing the right thing, but just about protecting one's turf. And when we filter that in, it helps us understand better why stuff ends up where it does. That it's not a boo-boo, it's not an oops, it's not that we're a bunch of lazy, sloppy citizens, but there's a real force going against what we tend to want, and that's that people have built an industry. Example, there are plenty of nonprofit groups that exist purely because they raise a hell of a lot of money, and actually getting to the solution would mean they go out of business, and they're in a business with millions and millions of dollars. So it really is to their benefit, and I could name a few gay ones here in my town that really don't want marriage to go through and have equality, because the 20, 30 million they pulled in a year goes away, and therefore all those people lose their jobs. Likewise, law enforcement is probably in the same position. They get the finest in weaponry, they get the best surveillance shit where they can read emails, listen to phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. All that eavesdropping stuff is sanctioned because there is a need for it. You remove a major need, and suddenly they're going to have to come up with another enemy.
Well, I highly recommend that all of your viewers check out a book by Radley Balkaw called Overkill. It's about the militarization of the police, largely due to the war on drugs, and in particular the war on marijuana. There's absolutely no reason that domestic police forces, which are meant to serve and protect, should be outfitted like paramilitary operations. It's degrading to democracy, and it puts the public in danger for a plant that has never killed anyone in 5,000 years of recorded use.
And it saved the life of George Bush the First. What more do you need? Sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm just having fun.
If you, but if your viewers are interested if your viewers are interested in asset forfeiture, and I think that that's another very important aspect of this, there are instances of police organizations. I think there was a story in Tennessee where the highway patrol and the local police actually got into a fist fight about who got to control a certain section of the highway because it represented millions of dollars in funds for their departments just from seized assets. You know, like catching somebody with an ounce of marijuana, saying that they're going to sell it, and then impounding their car and auctioning it off. Things like that. There was an incident in Michigan, I think maybe 2 years ago, where the people that were getting busted for having a very small amount of marijuana in their house actually recorded the police talking about which of their property they were going to take. I mean, it's just unbelievable that this sort of thing has become entrenched in our criminal justice system now. And I think it's something that Americans really need to know about.
Well, I'm really grateful that you brought this to us today, and we definitely would like to have you back on in a follow-up. We are having this political battle constantly on our own turf here in California, where it is legal so long as it's licensed. We have plenty of kiosks and storefronts, as I pointed out, right down at the end of my street. And it's been my evaluation that 90% of the people are in there for real and practical purposes and get honest to God relief, and that most people in California think it's a great idea. It is making money for the state, a state that needs money right now. It is a taxable event, so there's a real upside to it, and I haven't heard of a single, as you point out, car accident, bicycling accident, or armed robbery from anybody having access to this stuff, which seems ultimately to be a great benefit.
Well, I think it's something that people need to remember about California, and it's often pointed to as a bad example of medical marijuana law. But the fact of the matter is that hundreds of thousands of patients have been able to find relief and live a more normal life because of that law. So in that respect, it's a wild success, and that is undeniable.
Well, thank you so much. We've been talking to Morgan Fox. He's the communications manager for the Marijuana Policy Project in Washington, D.C. Their website, mmp.org. You can see the graphics right above him, mmp.org. You can get all you need to know there. There's
actually.
Thank you. Thank you. The video froze there for a second, so it dropped out. But thank you for that, mpp.org. You'll get all the information you need there, plus links to action. And we're going to have you on again as our California thing continues to heat up. Really appreciate your time, my friend, and onward and upward.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll come back anytime.
All right. Have a great night, my friend. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody else. Thank you, Billy Foster, as always, for engineering this from Phoenix, Arizona, where you are under the caressing soft bosom of Jan Brewer, another great helper bee in the war on the war, and the creator of the war, and the need for the war, and the war on that, and the war on...
The one complicating the war.
Yeah, that's right. Accommodating the war on the war. Thank you so much, Billy, and I will see you later, my friend. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, here on the Hangout at 6 p.m. Pacific.